How are you doing, folks? So this is the second cover I did for the game Contra Operation Galuga by Wayforward and Konami, and for this video I wanted to do something slightly different. Instead of just showing you me playing all those instruments, I thought it'd be interesting to actually show you how I went about making this cover and what the thought process went behind it. So this tune comes from the game Super Contra on the NES, and I thought it'd be interesting to listen to the original tune and see what it sounds like. Very NES, very Contra, very Konami. So when Wayforward reached out to me and asked me to cover these tunes, I said, well, do you have any idea what you want? You know, what style, what direction? And said, no, it's your thing. You do you, and we'll take it from there. So I sent them back those two tunes. The first one was accepted right away, first draft. This one took a few iterations, and this is the first draft I sent to them. Very much in the vein of what I normally do, just leads on the mandolin and the banjo, maybe swapping the harmonies between the two. I have a Highland pipes, which is the Irish bagpipe, going in the background. I have the U-bass, and then it's just a few drum elements. So I sent it to them. They replied after a few days saying, oh, we love it. I mean, it's great. It sounds great. However, the level itself is has more of a sort of cave sanctuary type of atmosphere. It's almost church-like in a way. There's some big statues, crystal structures and things like that. Maybe something more church-like might be more appropriate. So I said, could you maybe send me a screenshot? At least I'll have an idea, and then I can work from there. They did just that. They sent me a few screenshots of the level itself, and I started reworking the cover. So my first idea was first to get rid of the banjo. This is this light blue color, and the mandolin in this darker blue color, at least for the first minute of the cover. Instead of using those instruments, I thought I could use an organ to introduce the melody first. Like, nothing screams out church more than a church organ, really, with tons of reverb in this thing. I used after that it's a Soviet Russian organ that I picked up years ago, and I used that on a lot of covers, and it just has that grit. I use it an octave lower, and the two of them together sort of complement each other really well. So because I'm a string guy, I could not use a string instrument initially, and I use here this fado guitar. I have two recordings, one panned hard left and the other one hard right. It just adds a bit more dynamic in the soundscape. This is the guitar itself. It's a really cool instrument. It's very much a mix between a mandolin and a mandola or bouzouki. The headstock is really interesting, and you tune it right here at the headstock. Here in this case, I sort of heavily EQ it because I want a bit more aggressive tones. And I add a ton of delay. It's almost 50% wet with a lot of feedback, so it just gives me all this echoey sort of movement. And as you can hear, there's a ton of stuff going on texture-wise in the background. A few chimes that you heard. I also have small bells that I picked up over the years at flea markets and shops, tourist shops, things like that. Anything that has bells, I just buy, and I just play them together, and this is what it sounds like. Usually when I use those bells, I use them in combination with two other types of chimes. This one specifically is soda can lids that you use to open soda cans. And this is the actual little metal bit that I keep, and I pass them through a string and I just shake them like that, and this is what it sounds like. And this one is essentially beer caps that I keep in a wooden container. So I pan one hard left, one hard right, and I add a center channel, which is the bells. You barely hear them, but you just hear the texture in the background. The other thing I use here, just to create a bit more sort of uncertainty and unease, is this sample. And this is made by using just about 15 layers of different sheets of metal that I bow with a violin bow. You can get that same sound as well using a saw, a standard saw, and bowing it. I think there's a few saws in that, but it's about 15 layers that I EQ and reverse and add tons of effect to it to create this really, really uneasy sort of sample. And finally, as well for texture, I use just very echoey sort of flutes, just one long note being played on the flute. So altogether, this is what the intro sounds like now. Another thing I had to do, because there were so many drone-like sounds in the intro, is add a kick early. Not just a kick, a very sort of EDM type of kick. And this is a kick I used on my deadmau5 covers that I made from scratch, I think, using my bowram, which is an Irish percussion. And you can see it does look like a very sort of drawn out EDM type of kick, but it's very effective, and I think I have a ton of compression and sidechain and things like that on it. Sound very EDM like, and they worked really well just to drive that tune. So because it's church like and kind of spiritual, I also wanted to use choirs. I have two choirs, different choirs. Here I use VSTs because I'm a very poor singer and I'm not much of a choir boy, but here I use well, this one, which is initially a contact library that I heavily EQ. It sounds okay, but I wanted something a bit harsher and a bit more present, especially in the mids. So I use that as sort of the attack on the voices, and the trailing end is done by this Spitfire library. Again, with some mildly aggressive EQ, but together I think they worked really well. The other thing you've probably heard is the use of uilleann pipes, those Irish bagpipes. They're really interesting. I use them very often in my covers as well. And here, instead of just having one layer, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of it. It's because I use it with the harmonies, and I have different effects going in different places, and it's easier to have different tracks as opposed to doing automation where you sort of lose track of everything. It's just harder to maintain. And the rest is sort of the usual stuff: accordion layers, U-bass, backing on the bouzouki, and then a huge percussion section. Usually my percussion sections are usually just as big as the instrument section, because I like to fill up the gaps and fill up the space. So we got like about 3 or 4 different types of hi-hats, tambourine, there's a triangle here at some point. and you can hear it. There's a second kick coming in, and it comes in like halfway through the tune when the banjo and the mandolin are coming in, just to kind of add that extra drive. So it starts slow, church-like, and then we get into the rhythm of things with banjo and the mandolin, because I am Banjo Guy Ollie after all. And there you go. This is how I go about crafting pretty much every cover. There's a lot of thinking behind it. There's a lot of recording, of course, but there's a lot of arranging, a lot of EQing, a lot of effects, a lot of things that go into making a cover. Anyway, folks, this is Lightnings and Grenades for Contra Operation Galuga by Wayforward and Konami. The game is available on pretty much every single platform. There's also an album available on Spotify with all the musics and covers from the game. And now I will leave you with this cover. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.